Okay, so we'll go with the exercise. The exercise number 8 we are doing now. Let's first check kubectl get all. Okay, get services. There is nothing, and deployment also nothing. So everything is clean. So what we will do is we'll also see what we have to do is we have to see micro k8s status. Okay, so if you see in micro k8s status, there are some add-ons which are already there. Okay, and we have to enable ingress. Okay, so in short, we are in enabling ingress control for external access. Okay, so depending on different versions of Kubernetes, the method to enable ingress will be different. Okay, in micro k8s we are enabling ingress. In short, we are installing ingress. Okay, so the command is micro k8s enable ingress. It is very simple to install ingress. In short, we are installing ingress on micro k8s. So at the backend, it is installing some YML files to enable ingress. So these are all some YML files it has installed, means applied kubectl apply command it has used at the backend, and there are various configuration files that are applied, and ingress is enabled now. Just say check micro k8s status, and we see now ingress is enabled. Okay, so when the ingress is enabled, if you see kubectl get namespace, will have one more namespace with ingress. Okay, and when we go inside ingress get all, there will be few pods running. It is creating one. Okay, so the ingress controller is installed, and these are the pods related to ingress. It is installed on Kubernetes cluster. Now what we will do is we will create two containers. Okay, web app 1 on web app 2, or in short, we are creating two deployments. Web app 1 we are creating now. Web app 1 deployment and web app service both in the same file. So I'll explain it. So we can have multiple YML files in a single YML. Okay. The differentiator is -3 dashes or minus, or you can say hyphen. If we add 3 hyphen, we can have multiple files in the same YML file. So this is the deployment, and this is the service. In deployment, we'll be using only one replica. We are using HTTPD image. Okay, but the name of the container will be web app 1. Okay, it is nothing but a simple HTTPD image will be deploying, and the name of the deployment is web app 1 deploy, and the name of the service is web app 1 service. Similarly, we'll create service 2 as well along with the deployment for web app 2. So we have web app 1 and web app 2. In web app 2 also we are using HTTPD image, okay, to create a container. just apply the configuration kubectl apply -f web app 1 and web app 2. So we can see that two deployments and two services are running kubectl get all. Okay. So it is creating the container for web app 1 and web app 2, and now it is accessible only inside the cluster on these two cluster IPs. Okay. Now we want to access it from the external world, so outside the cluster. So for that, the one of the option would be to use the node port, but we don't want to expose the node ports. Okay. So we are using will be using ingress now. We'll do the ingress configuration. The other method is to use the load balancers. Okay, but load balancers are mostly used in cloud environment, and for whenever we use a load balancer, an external IP, that is a public IP, will be listed here. Okay, but it is also possible to have a load balancer on-prem. Okay, that we'll see next. Okay, only for testing purpose, but it will be on the private IP, not the public IP. But as of now, we have only option of using ingress. Now we'll define the ingress configuration. For that, we are creating ingress.yml, and we are creating two ingress definition in a single file. Just I'll explain. So we are defining ingress type of object. Okay, name for it is web ingress. Okay, and as I said, there will be few rules. So we'll define few rules inside the ingress. The first rule is whenever the request comes to web1.example.com, forward it to web1 service on port 80. Okay, similarly, whenever the request comes for web2.example.com, okay, then forward the request to web app 2 service, okay, which we created here, these two services. The request will be forwarded to these two services based on the URL. This is the URL. Okay, and the port number will be 80. Okay, so let's apply this as well. kubectl apply -f web ingress. Now just to kubectl get all. So ingress we cannot see in the all. We'll have to add. We'll have to check it in the ingress. kubectl get ingress will list the ingress configuration. Okay. So this is the ingress configuration. But this web app 1 and web app 2, this we haven't defined the DNS anywhere. So what we do not have a DNS server as of now. So what we will do is we'll just make an entry in /etc/hosts. Okay, and as this ingress is used, okay, for training purpose or learning purpose, it works only on localhost. Localhost means we'll have to make it will listen on 127.0.0.1. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just add this line or just modify this line in /etc/hosts. So the first line I'm modifying, okay, like this, that whenever the request comes to web1.example.com, it should listen on localhost. Whenever it request comes from web app 2, it should go to 127.0, and this web dot is not required, but leave it, no problem. So the DNS entry also we have created. Again check kubectl get ingress. Okay, but remember, as it is working on means for learning purpose, it will listen on 127.0.0.1. Okay, so now when I do curl web1.example.com, okay, so see it works because at the backend it is using ingress, and ingress is forwarding the request to the two services. Okay, service 1 and service 2. both are using the same image, so the output is same. But if we change the index.html inside it, we'll see different outputs. Okay, so this is how the ingress works. I know it should be accessible from the outside, but for learning purpose, we can test it only locally, because ingress by default on micro creators runs locally. Okay, in production environment, uh, it will listen on some IP address which is accessible from the outside world. Okay, so for that, what we will do is we'll be using some other method. Okay, but not now. But this is how the ingress configuration is done. So the main motto of the ingress is just forward the request. We will write some routing rules which will forward the request from a URL to a particular service.